Are you looking to nail cybersecurity or SOC analyst interview? Then this video is for you guys. Imagine you've done the courses, you've done the labs, you acquired skills, certification, and knowledge to start your journey into cybersecurity. Now is the time to nail the interview. Obviously, you can, questions like talk about yourself, why you want to be a SOC analyst, or a research about the company you are applying to work for are essential. But that's not what we're going to cover today. The goal is to actually talk about the technical and fundamental SOC analyst interview questions and guide you and provide you how to best answer those questions. So, without further ado, let's jump into the actual questions. So, talking about fundamentals, most of the time you're going to hear a question such as, what is CIA triad? So, CIA triad refers to confidentiality, integrity, and availability, essentially describing a model designed to guide policies for information security within an organization. Confidentiality involves limiting access to data to prevent unauthorized access. Integrity ensures data trustworthiness and accuracy. And availability aims for reliable access to information by authorized users. These principles are essentially foundational in cybersecurity, guiding the development of security policies and evaluating new technologies. So we enforce confidentiality normally by identity and access management controls and essentially role-based access. Integrity can be ensured by encryption and making sure the data cannot be tampered with while it's in transit or at rest. And availability makes sure that obviously people have access to the data they are allowed to access to. Because, CIA triad talks about the balance between confidentiality, integrity, and availability in order for us to be able to work with the data. Now, the second question that mostly appears in most of the interviews is, what is defense in depth? Or what does layered approach mean in security? Now, defense in depth is an information security strategy essentially that integrates people, technology, and operational capabilities to establish various barriers across multiple layers and dimensions of organization. We talk about defense in depth in the meaning that we want to layer security controls one on top of each other, and they sometimes can overlap to make sure that no failure of security controls leaves a wide open gap to be exploited in our organization. This approach involves applying multiple countermeasures, essentially, in a layered manner to achieve security objectives, ensuring that if one layer fails to stop an attack, others will provide additional protection. So hopefully that makes you guys clearer. Now, let's jump into another question that often can be confusing, I guess, in the beginning of your journey. What is the difference between hashing, encoding, and encryption? Now, encoding transforms data essentially from one format to another for interoperability with no security intent, reversible using public algorithms. Now, encryption makes data unreadable to unauthorized users, ensuring confidentiality with reversible key-based algorithms. Now, hashing is completely different. It generates an irreversible fixed length string unique to the input data. It's mostly used to ensure data integrity by comparing the result with a known valid hash. Now, another that usually trips up people is, what is the difference between asymmetric and symmetric encryption? Now, symmetric encryption essentially means that the same key is used to encrypt and decrypt the messages. This makes it easy to use but less secure. It also requires a safe method to transfer the key from one party to another. Now, Asymmetric encryption essentially uses two different keys for encryption and decryption. One party can encrypt the messages using known public key, but only those with private key can decrypt them. It is more secure than symmetric key encryption technique, but is much slower. So essentially, asymmetric encryption, what we talk about PKI. So PKI is public key infrastructure. Now, often the question is, when would you use symmetric or asymmetric encryption? Asymmetric perfectly lends itself to establish connection. So that's where the key exchange happens. So when you're talking about, for example, accessing website and when you are logging in, normally during the login process, you're using asymmetric key encryption. But once the connection has been established and you, for example, are streaming a video or something like that, then it switches to symmetric key encryption. So that's how you use different methods in different times. Now, the next one is explain the concept of zero trust. Now, the main concept behind the zero trust model is essentially never trust anyone and always verify, which means that users and devices should not be trusted by default. This requires continuous verification of their legitimacy before granting access. This model uses robust identity verification, device compliance validation, and least privileged access to enhance security across IT systems. It's designed to adapt to modern corporate networks' complex and interconnected nature, including cloud services, remote environments, and IoT devices. So essentially, we are nowadays moving towards zero trust architecture where we're not explicitly trusting devices and connections in our networks. We're trying to verify every single part of our networks. Now, let's jump into network security and essential SOC analyst interview questions from network security part. Often the question appears, what is TCP handshake? It is a mechanism designed so that two computers that want to pass information back and forth to each other can negotiate the parameters of the connection before transmitting data such as HTTP browser requests. It involves three crucial steps: SYN, SYN-ACK, and ACK. So essentially, SYN is a synchronization call which sends a packet to the server requesting a connection. The server responds with the SYN-ACK, which essentially synchronize and acknowledge it, indicating readiness to establish connection. Finally, the client sends an ACK, which is acknowledgement packet, back to the server, completing the handshake and establishing the reliable, sequenced, and error-checked channel for data exchange between the two systems. Now, what's the difference between TCP and UDP? So TCP is a transmission control protocol. Essentially, the main difference is that TCP is connection oriented, essentially establishes a connection before data transfer. It's reliable because it ensures data delivery in the correct order and essentially resends the lost packets. It's usually slower because of the overhead. Now, UDP is user datagram protocol, and usually it is connectionless, sends data without establishing a connection. It's quite unreliable because there's no guarantee delivery or order, no mechanism for resending lost packets. It's usually faster with less overhead, suitable for real-time applications where speed is preferred over reliability. So things like video streaming or gaming usually uses UDP. Now, another one is, what's the difference between IDS and IPS? So first of all, what are they? IDS is intrusion detection system and IPS is intrusion prevention system, serve to protect the network security. On one hand, IDS passively monitors and analyzes network traffic for suspicious activities, alerting administrators without intervening. While EPS, however, actually actively filters the traffic by using a set of rules to inspect it and often block it. So IDS just alerts you, while IPS have the ability, based on rules, to actually block that network traffic. So that's the main difference. Now, another difference is, what is the difference between HIDS, HIDS, and NIDS? So HIDS essentially is host intrusion detection system, and NIDS is network intrusion detection system. So similar to IPS IDS, but one is on a host and one is on a network. And that's the kind of probably the main difference, is that HIDS monitors and analyzes activities on the actual host, looking for suspicious activities. It compares current and past snapshots of the file system to detect changes indicating potential security breaches, while NIDS oversees essentially entire network, identifying malicious or unusual activities on all of the devices connected across to it, and initiates alerts for potential threats. So the main difference lies that host is for individual, HIDS is for individual hosts, and IDS is for network-wide monitoring. So, what is network segmentation and how it is helpful? What is the purpose of subnetting, and why is it used? And that's kind of, we're leaning towards now these questions, instead of just what is, but actually starting to think like a security professional, why certain security controls are useful, how are they used, and things like that. That's where the real key to understanding cybersecurity controls and cybersecurity interviewing techniques comes really handy, when you jump in to understand how to answer these questions. So network segmentation essentially involves dividing a large network into smaller chunks, sort of manageable subnets. The strategy essentially enhances security by creating boundaries that control traffic flow, limiting access to sensitive information, and reducing the risk of lateral movement by attackers. Additionally, segmentation essentially provides and improves network performance by reducing congestion, facilitating more efficient data routing, and aiding in compliance with regulatory requirements by isolating regulatory data. It's a key component in modern network architecture to secure and optimize network resources. Now, how would you detect and mitigate a man-in-the-middle attack in a corporate network? Now, man-in-the-middle attack often involves intercepting communication between two parties for unauthorized information gathering or alteration. Now, detection methods include monitoring for unexpected disruptions in the service, monitoring for unusual SSL and TLS certificate errors, or employing intrusion detection systems to spot unauthorized interceptions. Now, the mitigation methods usually are encrypting data in transit using protocols such as HTTPS, SSH, and IPsec to secure data communications, regularly updating and patching software and systems to fix vulnerabilities that could be exploited during man-in-the-middle attacks, and educating employees about the risks of man-in-the-middle attacks and safe practices, such as not connecting to unsecure public Wi-Fi networks without VPN protection. Now, let's explore a bit about web application security. How would you detect a directory traversal attack on your network? Now, detecting an attempted directory traversal attack involves monitoring and analyzing web application logs for unusual activity, such as requests containing forward slashes. So essentially, the way directory traversal works, you have normally in the network address dot and forward slash. So it's usually unusual paths that attempt to access unauthorized directories or patterns that deviate from normal user behavior. Implementing file integrity monitoring can also help by alerting when unauthorized changes are made to critical files. Now, utilizing a web application firewall configured to detect and block directory traversal patterns is another effective strategy. Regularly updating and patching web applications and servers to address known vulnerabilities is crucial for prevention. Now, Another important question to look at is how do you differentiate between a legitimate spike in web traffic and DDoS attack? Now, differentiating between a legitimate spike in network traffic and a DDoS attack involves analyzing the nature and source of the traffic. Look for patterns such as traffic volume that significantly exceeds normal levels, high number of requests from a single or few IP addresses, or requests that target specific endpoints or resources repetitively. Legitimate spikes often coincide with marketing campaigns or events and show diverse geographic origins and device types. At the same time, DDoS traffic may appear more uniform and lack the behavioral complexity of real users. Now, let's explore what is SQL injection. Now, SQL injection is a web-based vulnerability, allows attackers to interfere with the queries that an application makes to its database. It lets attackers view data they are not normally able to retrieve, including data belonging to other users or any other data the application can access. In some cases, it allows attackers to modify or delete the data, causing persistent changes to the application's essentially content or behavior. How can we detect it and prevent it? First of all, we have to closely monitor your web application's logs for unusual or unexpected SQL queries. This involves analyzing URLs from inputs and cookies for patterns indicating SQL code injection attempts, such as using SQL syntax like or 1 equals 1. Monitor for unusual database errors, unexpected application behavior, and unusual patterns in SQL queries logged. Intrusion detection systems can help automate the analysis by alerting on patterns typical to SQL injection. Additionally, performing regular security audits and vulnerability scans can help identify potential SQL injection vulnerabilities before they are exploited. Now, explain the significance of OWASP Top 10 for web application security and how would you use it in your security practices. Now, OWASP Top 10 is a standard awareness document for developers and web application security. It represents a broad consensus about the most critical security risks to web applications. I integrate its principles into security practices by guiding security coding practices and using it as a benchmark for security audits and training programs. This proactive approach ensures robust defense mechanisms against common threats. The image normally, you can even probably have a look and research, guys, and find the OWASP Top 10 because obviously it changes every year. But it's good to kind of have some knowledge and understanding of what are the biggest threats into web applications. And there are always, top 10s for various things. There's always top 10 for AI, always top 10 for web applications, and so on and so forth. Now, let's jump to another question. Discuss web application firewalls differences and use cases versus traditional network firewalls. Now, the WAF or web application firewall are designed specifically for monitoring HTTP traffic to and from a web application, providing protection against application layer attacks such as cross-site scripting, SQL injection, cross-site forgery requests, whereas traditional network firewalls, on the other hand, control inbound and outbound traffic based on IP addresses, ports, and protocols, offering a broader network perimeter defense without the granularity to address specific web application vulnerabilities. WAFs are used for targeted application security, while network firewalls serve as sort of first line of defense against general network threats. Now, let's look at log analysis and SIEM. So, how does SIEM work and how are they set up? First of all, SIEM, the Security Information and Event Management Platform. Essentially, SIEM tools collect and aggregate data from various sources across the organization's IT infrastructure, including servers, devices, and applications. This data is then analyzed in real time to identify abnormal behavior that could indicate a security threat. Now, key components of a SIEM system include agents, so essentially software installed on devices to collect and send data to the SIEM. So normally agents would sit on computers and servers. Collectors, so they gather data from various sources, including agents and devices that can run agents. Forwarders are those who transfer data to the SIEM system, particularly when collectors are not directly accessible. And then rule tuning, so adjusting SIEM rules to reduce false positives and ensure accurate threat detection. Now, what are indicators of compromise? Indicators of compromise are pieces of forensic data that identify potentially malicious activity on a system or a network. Examples include unusual network traffic, unexpected changes in file integrity, suspicious registry or system file changes, and anomalies in user account behavior. Security teams use IOCs to detect breaches early, facilitating rapid response to mitigate changes. These indicators are crucial for understanding a security threat's scope and taking appropriate corrective actions. Also, indicators of compromise normally, what happens is when you see a large scale attack that happens and you see it in the news and newspapers, normally cybersecurity companies access or companies usually share what we call threat intelligence, where they share indicators of compromise. So they share the techniques and kind of the ways of threat actors use the attack. So you are able to ingest indicators of compromise, usually in your SIEM, and hunt what we call threat hunting and hunt for those patterns of the same attack. Now, where do you find an event in Windows and Linux systems? So in Windows, you can find event logs through Event Viewer, where system security and application-related events are logged. In Linux, events are typically logged in a var /var/log directory with different files with various types of logs, such as syslog for system events, authlog for authentication events. And those tools and directories are essential for system administration, troubleshooting, and security auditing. Now, what is the difference between security event and security incident? Security event is any observable occurrence in a system or a network, which can include both normal and potentially harmful activities. Whereas a security incident, however, is a subset of security events that indicates a violation of organization security policies, standards, or practices, potentially impacting their confidentiality, integrity, or availability of information. Incidents require a response to mitigate the damage or recover from the incident itself. Now, let's jump into the last part, security policies and procedures. What is MITRE ATT&CK framework? Now, MITRE ATT&CK is becoming really popular and it's often used to detect and analyze threat actors. So MITRE ATT&CK framework is a comprehensive knowledge base of adversary tactics and techniques based on real-world observations. It is used to understand attacker behavior, improve cybersecurity posture, and develop strategies to detect it, prevent it, and mitigate cyber threats effectively. Now, what is an APT, otherwise known as Advanced Persistent Threat, and how might you identify one? Now, an advanced persistent threat is a prolonged targeted cyber attack where an intruder gains access to a network and remains undetected for an extended period of time. APTs aim to steal data rather than damage the network, typically carried out by well-funded groups targeting high-value entities. Techniques include spear phishing, zero-day exploits, and command and control servers, amongst others. Identifying an APT involves detecting unusual user account activity, unexpected database operations, or spear phishing attempts, indicating potential unauthorized access or data exfiltration efforts. Now, what is the difference between a risk, a vulnerability, and a threat? So, a vulnerability, first of all, is a weakness in a system that can be exploited. It's a specific flaw or deficiency in hardware or software. Now, a threat is anything that can exploit that vulnerability intentionally or accidentally and obtain, damage, or destroy an asset. Now, the risk, on the other hand, is a potential for loss, damage, or destruction of that asset as a result of a threat exploiting a vulnerability. It consists both the probability of an attack and its potential impact. Now, there's another one that comes up quite often. Explain the difference between red, blue, and purple team activities. How does each contribute to our organization's cybersecurity? Now, red team are the attackers. They simulate attacks to identify security weaknesses, while blue team are the defenders. They defend against those simulated attacks, while purple teams are there to enhance collaboration between red and blue teams, integrating offensive and defensive tactics. These activities collectively bolster our organization's cybersecurity by uncovering vulnerabilities, improving defenses, and fostering a culture of continuous security enhancement. Now, and the last part is, let's talk a bit about malware analysis. So, what is ransomware? Ransomware essentially is a malware that blocks access to victims' data, often through encryption, and demands a payment for restoration. It can spread via Trojans, often disguised as legitimate files. Payments are typically demanded in hard to trace digital currencies like Bitcoin. Impact of ransomware has grown with millions of attacks recorded annually, emphasizing the need for robust cybersecurity measures. What is a simple way of knowing if a file contains malware? Now, a simple way to check if a file may contain malware is to use online virus scanning tools such as VirusTotal. You can upload suspicious file and it will be scanned using multiple antivirus engines to detect potential malware. Additionally, be curious with files from unknown sources and keep your antivirus software updated for real-time protection. For more detailed techniques and tools, visit cybersecurity websites that can provide further insights for that, guys. And now, what is a fileless malware? And why is it challenging to detect? How would you mitigate the risks associated with it? Now, fileless malware leverages legitimate system tools to execute attacks, making it difficult to detect since it doesn't rely on files to operate. It can exploit system vulnerabilities, modify registry keys for persistence, or execute directly in memory. Mitigation includes employing advanced security measures like behavioral detection, restricting the use of scripting environments like PowerShell, and regular system. Now, this is an interesting one as well. Give me an example of a ransomware incident that piqued your interest and why. It's always good to be aware of what big cyber events happened in the past. How did they happen? What caused them? And how you would prevent them in the future. So, I'll give you one simple example. One of the most significant ransomware attacks in 2023 involved Lee Valley Health Network, where the Black Cat ransomware group attacked, affecting sensitive patient data, including radiation oncology treatment images. The attackers demanded ransom, which LVHN refused to pay, leading Black Cat to leak sensitive images to increase the pressure. The incident highlights the evolving extortion tactics of ransomware groups and the vulnerability of healthcare organizations such as attacks. So they're using various extortion tactics nowadays, not only to make people pay, but potentially do a double extortion and leak it to the media or even regulatory bodies. But those are some of the interview questions that often come up, but we'll probably explore and probably talk about various other ones in the future episodes. But Let me know, guys, if you found it helpful. Let me know how you guys are developing your own cybersecurity careers and what interview questions have tripped you up in the past. And let me know what kind of other interview questions you would like me to answer in a future series. But until then, keep grinding, guys, keep developing, and don't always trust what you find on the internet. In cybersecurity, the main thing that you need is grit, grind, and curiosity, and you can achieve any goal you wish to achieve. Until next time.